Tommy Lee Jones has built a career on intensity. Every glare, every pause, every line he delivers carries the weight of conviction. But that same force, the one that made him unforgettable on screen, has made him nearly impossible to endure off it. Behind his calm, disciplined exterior lies a man whose devotion to craft often collided violently with those who approached it differently. For some, working with him was an honor. For others, it was a lesson in how quickly admiration can turn into silent hostility. What follows isn't gossip. It's a record of the moments when respect between great talents broke apart. Jim Carrey, the man who made him walk away. It was 1995. Batman Forever was one of the most anticipated movies of the decade, bringing together two of Hollywood's biggest stars, Jim Carrey, the new king of comedy, and Tommy Lee Jones, the Oscar-winning veteran fresh off The Fugitive. But instead of chemistry, the set became a battlefield of energy versus control. Carrey was in his prime, eccentric, spontaneous, a storm of improvisation. Jones, on the other hand, approached every role with surgical precision. He rehearsed, analyzed, and expected everyone else to do the same. Their worlds collided in ways that went beyond creative differences. It was a philosophical divide. Carrey believed in chaos as art. Jones believed in discipline as truth. The tension came to a head not during a scene, but in a quiet restaurant late one evening. Carrey spotted Jones dining and decided to greet him. The result would become one of the most famous Hollywood encounters ever told. As Carrey later recalled, Jones rose from his seat, looked him straight in the eye, and said coldly, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." Then he walked out without another word. Even director Joel Schumacher later confirmed the rift, saying, "Jim was a force of nature. Tommy is, and I say this with great respect, a scene stealer. You can't steal scenes from Jim Carrey." Jones never denied it. Years later, when asked about the story, he muttered, "I was in a bad mood that day." That was his version of confirmation, the closest he would ever come to admitting disdain. From that night on, they never spoke again. Despite their combined box office power, the two were never cast together afterward. Batman Forever became a commercial hit, but its set left emotional wreckage behind. For Jim Carrey, the encounter was a humbling moment, a reminder that not everyone could appreciate his madness. For Tommy Lee Jones, it was another day in a career defined by zero tolerance for what he saw as frivolity. The line, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery," has since outlived the movie itself. It became the perfect symbol of who Tommy Lee Jones really is, a man who could play the hero, the villain, or the lawman, but never the fool. Steven Seagal, the battle that almost broke a set. Long before Batman Forever, there was another storm, one that nearly derailed an entire film. In 1992, Under Siege brought together two powerful egos at very different crossroads. Steven Seagal was then Hollywood's reigning action star, a martial arts icon who saw himself less as an actor and more as an invincible symbol. Tommy Lee Jones, fresh off JFK, was a respected character actor finally receiving the acclaim he had worked for his entire life. Their collision was inevitable. From the first week of production, tension pulsed through the set. Seagal wanted control over stunts, camera angles, even dialogue. He was famous for clauses in his contracts guaranteeing that his character could never lose a fight. To him, movies were vehicles for power. To Jones, they were platforms for truth. That difference poisoned everything that followed. Director Andrew Davis tried to keep the peace, but resentment grew with every scene. During rehearsals for the film's climactic knife fight, Seagal demanded to dominate the entire sequence, ensuring his character would never appear weak. Jones objected. He believed their confrontation should feel real. Two skilled men, both capable of winning. When Davis sided with Seagal to preserve shooting time, Jones felt betrayed. He turned cold, mechanical, his professionalism masking fury. Stunt coordinator Stephen Lambert later revealed that Seagal counted every hit and parry, making sure he landed more blows than he received. Jones thought it was absurd. One afternoon, in front of the crew, he muttered, "I didn't realize I was making a movie with someone who's never allowed to get hit." The words sliced deeper than any knife choreographed for the screen. From that moment, the atmosphere on set became suffocating. Crew members started placing bets on which of the two would snap first. Weapons Master Bill Davis remembered a chilling silence one day when both actors found themselves in the armory at the same time. "You could feel it in your bones," he said years later. Everyone froze. It was like standing between two loaded guns. Producers eventually had to film their scenes separately whenever possible. Even the movie's promotional tour kept them apart, a nearly unheard-of move for two leads of a blockbuster. When journalists asked about Seagal, Jones simply replied, "Let's just say there are actors, and there are those who think they are actors." It was the last word on the matter. Ironically, Under Siege became a box office success, praised for its tension and realism, tension that existed not just in the script, but in every glare and line exchanged between its stars. Jones's contempt may have fueled the performance that earned him the film's best reviews. For Seagal, the experience marked the beginning of his decline. Critics noticed that his co-star, even in loathing, stole the movie from him. Val Kilmer, The Cold War on Set. By 1995, Tommy Lee Jones was one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. He had just won an Oscar for The Fugitive and carried the confidence of a man who had earned every scar on his way up. His next project, Batman Forever, should have been routine, a colorful blockbuster that would cement his box office draw. Instead, it became another battleground, this time against its leading man, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was the embodiment of the 1990s method actor, intense, brooding, and often impossible to read. He lived inside his characters, sometimes at the expense of everything else around him. For Jones, that kind of indulgence wasn't art, it was chaos. He came to set each day with lines memorized, marks rehearsed, and a clear vision of how to execute the scene. Kilmer came searching for moments, chasing spontaneity that Jones found wasteful. One assistant director later described it perfectly. They were like two gunfighters on opposite ends of a saloon, each waiting for the other to blink first. Their standoff remained mostly unspoken, but everyone on set could feel it. Kilmer's quiet intensity met Jones's rigid professionalism, like steel grinding against steel. The breaking point arrived during one of their few direct confrontations, a scene where Batman and Two-Face meet face-to-face. Kilmer wanted multiple takes to explore emotional range. Jones wanted precision, not experiments. After the fourth take, Jones's patience snapped. Loud enough for the crew to hear, he said, "I've made 7 films this year. I don't have time for this nonsense." For Kilmer, the remark was more than an insult. It was dismissal. He retreated further into silence, avoiding Jones entirely between takes. In his 2020 memoir, I'm Your Huckleberry, Kilmer devoted pages to the Batman Forever experience, yet never once mentioned Jones by name. It was a deliberate omission, a quiet erasure that said more than any confession could. Jones's response came during the film's press tour, when a reporter asked about his co-star. He replied coolly, "I worked with Batman." "I didn't work with Mr. Kilmer." The line was sharp, final, and utterly characteristic. It wasn't anger, it was closure. Wesley Snipes, clash of control and pride. When U.S. Marshals began production in 1997, Tommy Lee Jones was returning to familiar ground. His Oscar-winning role as Deputy U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard in The Fugitive had made him a legend, stoic, relentless, incorruptible. The studio expected a worthy sequel, but what they got instead was a war of wills between Jones and his new co-star, Wesley Snipes. From the start, there was tension. Harrison Ford was gone, and Snipes, known for his charisma and physical intensity, had been brought in as the new fugitive. But this wasn't a partnership. It was a power struggle. Jones saw the character of Gerard as his own creation, one he had carefully shaped with precision and restraint. Snipes brought a very different energy, instinctive, improvisational, confident in his own stardom. According to crew members, their first argument came during a script read through, when Snipes suggested changes to dialogue he felt didn't ring true. Jones, protective of the film's tone, rejected them outright. The air grew cold, and from then on, both men treated each other like rivals, sharing a stage too small for two leads. Director Stuart Baird later confirmed what many on set whispered. Tommy is methodical and exact. Wesley is intuitive and physical. They were oil and water. It wasn't long before sarcasm replaced civility. When Snipes wasn't present, Jones would refer to him mockingly as the martial arts expert. To Jones, Snipes's athletic bravado clashed with the disciplined realism he demanded from the film. Their feud peaked during an action sequence where Snipes performed one of his own stunts, a dangerous rooftop pursuit. After the take, Jones reportedly muttered to a nearby assistant, "He's not chasing criminals, he's chasing attention." Snipes heard about the remark within hours. The two didn't speak again for the rest of the day or for most of the shoot. Crew members described the atmosphere as Arctic. The actors communicated through assistants or the director, rarely addressing each other directly. Yet, when the camera rolled, their animosity came alive in a way that gave the film its pulse. The cat and mouse dynamic felt real because it was real. When U.S. Marshals premiered in March 1998, critics noticed something missing: chemistry. The film performed decently, but it lacked the emotional depth of The Fugitive. Behind that absence was the cold truth. The partnership had never existed. Jones moved on without looking back, while Snipes, still at the height of his fame, rarely mentioned the project again. Sally Field, When Passion Met Precision. By 2012, Tommy Lee Jones had nothing left to prove. He was a legend, respected by peers, feared by crews, and admired by audiences for his unshakable intensity. When Steven Spielberg cast him as the fiery abolitionist Thaddeus Stevens in Lincoln, it was a perfect match, an actor known for moral gravity playing a man defined by it. But what should have been a harmonious collaboration soon became another clash, this time with one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, Sally Field. Field was everything Jones wasn't: warm, emotional, and deeply immersed in method acting. She lived her roles completely, allowing emotion to guide her every decision. Jones, on the other hand, treated acting like architecture: structure first, emotion later. From the very first table read, their differences were unmistakable. Field stayed in character between takes, speaking to Jones as Mary Todd Lincoln, trembling with grief and rage. Jones, who believed the work should end the moment the camera stopped, found it exhausting. During one particularly charged rehearsal, Field continued to channel Mary Todd's instability even after Spielberg had called cut. Jones, breaking character, turned to her and said sharply, "Sally, the camera's not rolling." "You can stop now." The room froze. Field didn't respond. She simply nodded, stepped aside, and returned to silence. Later, she would describe their working relationship with characteristic honesty. "Tommy isn't warm and fuzzy. We had very different approaches, and sometimes that created friction. But friction can create fire, and that's what you see on screen." She wasn't wrong. Their shared scenes crackled with tension, the air between them alive with unspoken resentment and raw authenticity. Jones's restraint met Field's volatility like flint meeting steel. It was difficult to watch, and impossible to look away. On set, the tension became an open secret. Spielberg, ever the diplomat, managed it quietly, separating their shooting schedules when necessary. But the chill lingered. During the film's promotion, When journalists asked Jones about working with Field, he replied evenly, "Sally is very dedicated to her process." The words seemed polite, but his tone was glacial, professional respect without warmth. And yet, that same creative collision gave Lincoln some of its most memorable moments. Jones earned another Academy Award nomination, his 7th, for a performance defined by restraint and conviction. Field, too, received critical acclaim for her haunting portrayal of Mary Todd, Joel Schumacher, the director who pushed him too far. Tommy Lee Jones's intensity didn't just clash with actors. Sometimes it collided head-on with those in charge, and no conflict revealed that more vividly than his battle with director Joel Schumacher during the chaotic production of Batman Forever in 1995. When Jones signed on to play Harvey Dent, better known as Two-Face, he expected a dark, psychological follow-up to Tim Burton's earlier Batman films, something grim and brooding, full of moral conflict. Instead, Schumacher had a different vision entirely: neon colors, comic energy, and exaggerated performances. It was the beginning of what Jones later called a circus. From the first week, he made his disappointment known. Production designer Barbara Ling recalled Jones staring at the kaleidoscopic sets and muttering, "This isn't what I signed up for." To him, the tone was childish, and worse, it trivialized the character's duality, a complexity he'd hoped to explore. He wanted Two-Face to feel human, damaged, tragic. Schumacher wanted him loud, flamboyant, and marketable. Their arguments grew louder with each scene. During one particularly over-the-top sequence, Jones flat-out refused to perform a take he thought made the character ridiculous. Schumacher, furious, threatened to replace him. Jones stood his ground. He finished the movie, but from that day forward, he treated the director with polite silence, the kind that carries more weight than shouting ever could. In a 1996 interview, when asked about Batman Forever, Jones dismissed it in a single word: childish. He then changed the subject. Years later, when pressed on whether he'd ever work with Schumacher again, he said simply, "I doubt it." Schumacher, to his credit, took the blame with grace. In a 2017 retrospective, he called Jones an extraordinary actor who takes his work very seriously, then added, "Perhaps a psychologically complex villain wasn't the right match for the tone we were trying to achieve." It was a diplomatic answer, but also an admission that their creative worlds had never been meant to coexist. What do you think? Was Tommy Lee Jones right to defend his craft at all costs, or did his pursuit of perfection push too many people away? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories from behind Hollywood's brightest lights and darkest shadows.